Who are you supporting in this race?
Donald Trump.
Why Donald Trump?
Donald Trump's the best man. Joe Biden's got one foot in the grave.
How do you feel about your former governor being in the race right now?
I think she was a good governor, but she's not presidential. She's too liberal.
Right now, we can make a major projection. CNN projects that Donald Trump will win the South Carolina Republican primary, defeating former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley in her home state and securing his fourth major early victory in the GOP primary season. The former president taking another critical step toward winning his third Republican presidential nomination and continuing his dominance over the race ahead of the all-important and delegate-rich Super Tuesday contests just 10 days from now.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about the embarrassment that is Nikki Haley, because once again, she has been humiliated, this time in her own state of South Carolina, with 72% reporting as of the making of this video at 11:30 p.m. at night. Donald Trump is crushing her with 60% of the vote compared to her 39.3%. Okay, so this is a crushing defeat for Nikki Haley. It is a historic win for Trump. And here's the real crushing part about this for Nikki Haley, okay? Just like the New Hampshire primary, this is an open primary in South Carolina in which you did not only have Republicans voting, but you also had Democrats that were taking advantage of these rules in order to vote for Nikki Haley, okay? So this is not just Republicans voting for Nikki Haley, but also Democrats voting for Nikki Haley, and Trump still crushed her, right? He still crushed her, okay? And we know that Nikki Haley basically is a Democrat, because even the Democrats, like, for example, Gavin Newsom, came out and told us that, hey, Nikki Haley is a surrogate for us. Take a look.
Do you think that Haley or Trump would be easier to beat for him?
Well, first of all, I think she's one of our better surrogates, so I hope she stays in. Hope she does well tomorrow.
All the nasty stuff she says about Trump.
She's spot on 99% of it. So I'm enjoying this primary, and I hope it continues. So I wish her luck. But look, Trump's the nominee. We all know that. You know that. Everybody out there knows that. And I think the polls are suggestive. She's going to get well up tomorrow, and then she'll make a case, I guess, just to continue in this. But again, I have no problem with her continuing for as long as she wishes, because I think she's making a good case against Trump.
Head-to-head polls suggest that she would clean Biden's clock. Yeah. And it's a tougher race.
Trump's the nominee. Everybody knows Trump's the nominee.
So
there's not a state that, with respect, there's no evidence to suggest, there's no polling to suggest, there's nothing to suggest, momentum or otherwise, that she can win any state in the Republican primary coming up. So it's just not. Donald Trump is the nominee. Everybody knows that. No, I don't mean that to be dismissive. I have respect for the former governor, a lot more than the former president, Donald Trump. But as I said, I wish her luck in the context of being out there and making the case that we're making against Donald Trump equally.
Yeah, so you see that, you heard that. What Gavin Newsom is saying is that, well, we think that Nikki Haley is a surrogate for us because her continuing to stay in the race, despite the fact that she has absolutely no chance of winning, it just works out well for us, right? She's making a case against Trump, okay? And he hopes that she remains in the race, despite the fact that he knew, like everybody else knew, that she was going to get stomped in her own home state. And lo and behold, Nikki Haley is acting as the Democrats want her to act and refusing to drop out, continuing to stay in the race, despite the fact that she couldn't even win her own home state. Take a look.
I said earlier this week that no matter what happens in South Carolina, I would continue to run for president. I'm a woman of my word.
Yeah, so make no mistake, Nikki Haley is working on behalf of the Democrats, okay? And that is what she's basically doing now, staying in the race. We all know that. Democrats are saying that, again, it's become clear because she doesn't have a path to victory, right? If she can't win her own home state, then she's not going to win any state, okay? Now, why she couldn't win her own home state? Well, if you ask people like Joy Reid in the mainstream liberal media, well, it's because of white evangelical Christians, which, you know, that's the only way that she knows how to analyze anything in politics using race. So nobody should be surprised by this answer.
Two questions here we've been asking in these early primary contests from the exit polls, and just wanted to get your read on these because we've talked about them a lot. I think they sort of serve as proxy questions in some ways. Number one, did Joe Biden legitimately win in 2020? That's one of the exit polls. Yes gets 32% of the folks voting in South Carolina, according to our exit polls. No gets 65%. So 2/3, 1/3 there. And then a question about if Trump is convicted, is he fit to be president? Should he face criminal conviction in any one of the outstanding 91 indictments he faces? You get, again, very similar numbers. Yes, he's still fit at 65. No, he's not at 32. Again, that's sort of 2/3, 1/3. What's your read on that?
Right. And I think that you can go back to what Steve was just saying about the makeup of this electorate. I mean, this is a, 92% white, overwhelmingly evangelical Christian primary electorate in South Carolina. And I think writ large around the country, that is the way they think. I mean, even among the independent voters, who are about, 21% of this electorate, it's like almost a 50-50 question as to whether President Biden is the legitimate president of the United States. That is what the Republican Party is now. It is a baseline condition of being a base Republican right now that you do not believe that the 2020 election was legitimate. You believe that Donald Trump is the rightful president of the United States. You believe that he's the most electable candidate. That's also in these exit polls, more so than Nikki Haley, which there's no empirical data that supports that. And you believe that he should be president regardless of whether he is convicted of a felony, which he very likely will be in the next month.
Yeah, so you're saying that, you heard that, okay? Full-blown meltdown mode here from MSNBC. Boohoo, whining and crying because people have different beliefs than they do, and we continue to select Donald Trump to be the leader of the party, okay? So, yeah, she's upset. She's blaming white people as per the usual, okay? And we have CNN here, we're also going to react to their reaction of Trump winning, and again, even they have to acknowledge the reality that this is, quote, one of the greatest political comebacks ever, and that the results are overwhelming, and it only doesn't make sense to people who aren't paying attention, right? Now, if you're actually paying attention, it makes sense 100%, right? Because everybody knows that the Republican Party is the party of Trump. And if you believe that Nikki Haley had any chance of actually winning, then you were delusional. So let's listen to CNN cope about this.
Speech, overwhelming results in South Carolina. We called it right at the top of the hour as soon as the polls closed. Back with the team here in New York. Listen, you've heard a lot of Trump speeches.
Yeah, I mean, RIP the Reagan GOP. There's something so jarring about watching Lindsey Graham and Tim Scott, all of who condemned him after January 6th, lining up to do their best campaign rally impersonation and saying this is the most qualified man to be president.
The night of January 6th, Lindsey Graham was saying he was,
I'm done with him.
Enough.
I mean, listen, it is the greatest political comeback in history. Just 3 years ago, he was done in the party, and it only took a matter of months before he came back and handily won in Nikki Haley's home state. The question now becomes this. She's held on. We'll see where the margins break down tonight to about just under a third of Republican votes in some of these primaries. How many of those votes will go to Donald Trump? Because he will need those in a general election. Some of those are never going to be with him, but how many is the open question now?
Yeah, so I think this is a legitimate question, okay? I think everything else that Alyssa Farah-Griffin is saying, I think is not as important. But it is important because if 40% of these votes are going to Nikki Haley, we got to assume that a good amount of those votes are Democrats, right? So maybe even half, right? Half of those Democrats. Then maybe you're looking at 80-20, okay? If you're looking at the 80-20 number, Republicans voting for Trump to Nikki Haley, that's not something to be super concerned about, right? Because at the end of the day, Nikki Haley does represent legitimate competition towards Trump, unlike what's going on in the Democrat primary where you have Joe Biden winning by, 95% in some of these primaries. Well, that's because there's no legitimate competition, and he's actually president of the United States, right? If the Democrats actually had a real primary, if they had real televised debates, the way that the Republicans had real televised debates, actual real competition, or real primary, I don't think that Joe Biden will be winning by these margins, okay? The Republicans had a very competitive primary in the sense that you had, about 10 people that were in the race, and literally all of them were attacking Trump the whole time. Okay, Trump was public enemy number one. He had everything thrown against him, And the fact is that even in a one-on-one matchup with Nikki Haley, he's dominating. Okay, now Nikki Haley is a formidable opponent. So a lot of people are going to look into this and say, well, 40% of GOP voters didn't vote for Trump. There must be a problem. But I think that a vast majority of those people are going to fall in line with Trump if they are Republicans. And I think that the people who don't fall in line with Trump are probably Democrats that voted for Nikki Haley, right? So, I don't see it as that much of an issue, even though I will say that one of the good reasons why Nikki Haley is still in the race, it does help Trump collect data on how people are voting so that it can help him make a better decision in regards to how to campaign moving forward and some of the voters that he needs to show up support with in order to win in the general election. I also think that it will help him make his pick for vice president, right? So I wouldn't let the mainstream liberal media fool you in regards to making you think that, oh, Trump, he only got 60% of the vote, okay, in a two-person race. I don't think that's a bad number, especially considering the fact that Democrats are voting for Nikki Haley, okay? I think that if you took Democrats out of the race, it could possibly be 80-20 or even 90-10, okay, or maybe even more than that. Who knows? I think that Trump should definitely take a deeper look into that number of people who are voting for Nikki Haley, specifically the amount of Democrats, and take that into consideration moving forward.
Look, I mean, for me, Tim Scott is obviously auditioning to be vice president. And every time Trump just ritually humiliates him, talks about him having low energy, makes fun of his campaign, and then Tim Scott gets out there and he tries to do something that's really not natural to him, and then he walks off. But, we were talking about before, this is kind of the pathway that Pence got on. And so you might not just be watching the resurrection of a Tim Scott, but you might also be watching the rise of resurrection of Trump, the rise of Tim Scott.
I cannot think of a Republican that I want to be vice president more than Tim Scott.
Sure.
We love Tim Scott. Yeah. All Republicans of all stripes love Tim Scott. And I agree with what Donald Trump said. I think he's a good man.
Yes.
And I think he's a humble man. And I want him to do whatever he has to do to get this job. I really do, because I think
you're in love.
Yeah, well, I do agree with that. Tim Scott's a good guy, right? I mean, I have nothing really bad to say about Tim Scott. I think he'd definitely be the safest pick in the sense that he would definitely make the establishment Republicans happy, and I don't think that he would rock the boat too much with the America First MAGA base. Also, you have the identity politics as well too, but outside identity politics, I mean, Tim Scott's been, a good senator. He's been a respected senator for a long time. I think clearly he's qualified for the job. I mean, if Kamala's qualified, then Tim Scott is definitely qualified. I think that Tim Scott would be a good pick, right? If I was Trump and I had to pick a guy today, I probably would pick Tim Scott. Again, even though for somebody like myself, who is more America First, he's not going to excite me as much as somebody like Vivek Ramaswamy. But from an electability standpoint, you got to get the establishment Republicans on board. You got to unite the party. And Tim Scott would do that, right? He would do that more than anybody else I could think of off the top of my head. He would unite the party, and we could focus mainly on trying to get more people who are independent leaning to get on board with the ticket rather than trying to shore up the base of the party, right? And that's why I think Tim Scott, he probably won't help you too much expand the base, but he will definitely help you shore up the base in the sense that you don't have to worry about infighting between MAGA and the establishment Republicans, because you have somebody like Tim Scott that they will be very happy with being on the ticket. And you can focus on just, again, trying to make sure you get all of your core voters out. And in an election like this, where you have Democrats that are disaffected, Joe Biden has the lowest approval rating ever for a president in modern history. Nobody's excited to vote Democrat. You have people that are building coalitions to not vote for Joe Biden. That could very well be all you need, right? You might not need somebody on a ticket that is a little bit riskier that expands the base, right? You might need somebody that literally just makes the base stronger, ensures that they come out and vote for you, and that's it. And that could very well be the safest pick. So, I personally, the more I think about it, the more I'm leaning towards Tim Scott being the wisest pick. Not necessarily my preferred pick, but the wisest pick if you want to win. Now, my preferred pick, if you actually really want to get shit done, okay, and really rock the boat, will be Vivek Ramaswamy, right? That's who I want to see. That's who I'm going to get excited to vote for. But, hey, I understand why Trump would pick somebody like a Tim Scott Tim Scott would probably be the wisest pick if you want to win.
He does seem willing. You should feel good.
Your wish will be granted, sir.
You all are down on what is going on here, but politics has become performative, and he is doing what he has to do. And if he is on this ticket, Republicans are going to love it. They're going to love it. So I'm glad to see him going all around.
Tim Scott.
Yeah, he's right. He's right. If Tim Scott is on the ticket, it shores up the party, right? I think there's a lot less infighting, and I think that that's probably the best for this party at this point because it is a fractured party. And Trump is probably definitely going to have to pick somebody that's establishment for the VP ticket because you need those Republicans in order to win, right? Whether or not people like to hear that, you have to get people to vote for you in order to win. I mean, that's just the reality of politics.
Tim Scott I firmly believe Tim Scott is a good man.
Yes.
I've said that many times before. My line about Tim Scott is that I would give Tim Scott a kidney if he asked me, but I'd never vote for him, right? But the person that Tim Scott has become while auditioning, you call it auditioning, I'd probably call it something else if I was just talking to Audie and Van and we were in a room by ourselves. But what he's doing...
AKA, if it was only black people in a room, we call him a bootlicker. Right? That's what this guy is trying to say, which is hilarious to me because you bootlicked the Democrat Party, little boy, right? You bootlicked the Democrat Party. Again, it's amazing how these Negroes always want to go out of their way to try to call black conservatives bootlickers, okay, when they fall in line behind the white man, Joe Biden. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. I can't stand these people, right? I can't stand these kind of people. I really can't. They think they're so black when these people were probably nerds growing up, okay? These probably were the people that were friends with all white people. And now they get on national television and act like they so pro-black. I can see right through these type of people, right? Any of these guys that get on television or even on YouTube and they want to try to play up their blackness and to pretend like they're so pro-black and all that. A lot of these people are just projected, right? They're projected because they never felt like they fit in with black folks, right? So therefore, they have to go on national television and use politics as a way to try to prove how black they are. And it's just hilarious to me. It really is.
Doing right now is embarrassing. And I think this is not the Tim Scott that we know. But you also see this happen with many men and women who actually find themselves in this Trump orbit. I mean, this is not who Lindsey Graham, we knew Lindsey Graham to be before
he wouldn't even show his face in Munich this time, after years and years going with John McCain to the conference that celebrates the NATO alliance. He wouldn't even show up.
And thank you. That bolsters the point that I'm making. And you're seeing a shell of who Tim Scott really is. He's not the rah-rah, this is Trump country, woo-ha, let's go do this. I mean, and at the end of the day, I mean, what does he get from this? I mean, maybe
the vice presidency.
Maybe, but if he misses, what is he, HUD director?
No, he's U.S. Senator from South Carolina and one of the most respected Republicans in the country.
But he's losing.
But
he's losing. No, not either way. My point, and I think Van's point, and everybody else's point, is that you're losing respect day by day by going out here and auditioning.
There is a segment of lifelong Republicans who are mortified by what Tim Scott's doing. We are definitely the minority. You're absolutely right, Scott. But there are some of us who are like, we thought you were one of the good ones. We thought you were going to tell the truth. I want to know his answer to.
That sounds like racism to me. Y'all see how these people. You see how these people think, bruh? We thought he was one of the good ones, right? I thought that was a racist thing to say. Again, amazing. Amazing. Just because Tim Scott is trying to be Trump's vice president. Tim Scott is doing what all these politicians do, okay? When they're trying to accumulate power, this is what they do. I don't have a problem with it. I think Tim Scott's a good guy. It ain't no different than what these Democrats do, right? Like Kamala Harris, who said that Joe Biden was a racist on stage, a segregationist, said it personally affected her. And then what did she do, right? What did she do? She lined up and she kissed the ring, right? She licked that boot, right? The Biden boot in order to be VP. That's what she did. So again, these people try to act like what Tim Scott is doing is something they ain't never seen before. I mean, this is nonsense. But anyways, regardless, Nikki Haley, she's refusing to drop out, okay, even though she got embarrassed in her home state. Again, I think it's obvious at this point she's working on behalf of Democrats. Her end goal here is to see Trump get convicted in court and pulled out of the race, which, you know, if Trump gets pulled out, will she be the nominee? Hey, that would be, I think, a Republican civil war, because even if she did become the nominee, I don't think there's any guarantee that the Republican base would show up and vote for her. Okay, so again, I'm not sure exactly what her end goal here is, outside of just sabotaging Trump, because at this point, that's what she's doing. She's forcing Trump to use campaign funds to try to beat her or to continue to win these races, which honestly he might not need at this point. Let's keep it 100, but still. And she's continuing to attack him. Okay, she's doing the work of Democrats, but yet she claims she's on Team Republican. I don't understand how she can be a team player anymore when you've lost your own home state. I get staying in until your home state. I would have dropped out if I was her. I would not have taken that L like that, but she did. But now when, it becomes extremely clear that you don't have a path forward, you're still staying in the race, you're revealing yourself to be somebody that is now working against the party, right? You're putting your own personal ego, you're putting whatever your agenda is over the party. And that's what Nikki Haley is doing at this point. And now it's becoming to the point where she's getting into the territory of never being able to have a political career anymore, because she's effectively shown herself to be an agent that is working against the Republican Party, kind of like a Liz Cheney. And that really can't be redeemed, okay? So, I mean, if she thinks that she's going to have a career or be able to run for president in 2028, she's sadly mistaken, because people are not going to forget the fact that she continued to stay in the race and actively sabotage the Republican nominee, even though it has become clear that people in her own home state don't even want her to be the nominee over Trump. Yeah, you're basically a Democrat at this point, okay? You're basically on the other team, and that's my main takeaway from this victory by President Trump, which is that Nikki Haley remaining in the race tells you everything you need to know about her. And she's basically guaranteeing at this point that she's not going to have a political future because of her willingness to continue to stay in the race and refusal to drop out. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.